In only 24 moves, Magnus Carlsen destroy Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's Sicilian defense. The game start with e4, controlling the center. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave responds with the Sicilian defense, a very popular and complex opening. MVL aims to challenge Magnus Carlsen's control of the center, particularly the d4 square, and create an unbalanced game. After that, Magnus Carlsen develops the knight to f3, a natural square that controls d4 and e5, and prepares for kingside castling. In this position, MVL plays d6, supporting the c5 pawn and preparing to develop the knight to f6. This is a common setup in many Sicilian variations. The next move, Magnus Carlsen develops another knight to c3, further controlling the center and preparing for d4. MVL develops the knight to f6, attacking Magnus Carlsen's e4 pawn and preparing to castle kingside. The game continue. Magnus Carlsen pushes h3, a prophylaxis move. This move is a bit unusual in the opening. It's often played to prevent MVL's knight or bishop from going to g4. It also creates a small escape square for the king after castling. MVL develops the knight to c6, putting pressure on Magnus Carlsen's d4 square. After that, Magnus Carlsen pushes d4, plays the central pawn break, opening the position and challenging MVL's control of the center. MVL captures on d4, leading to an open Sicilian. Magnus Carlsen recaptures with the knight, bringing it to a strong central square. After that, MVL pushes the e-pawn, attacking the knight on d4 and gaining more central space. This is a common theme in the Sicilian, pushing the Magnus Carlsen knight to retreat. In this position, Magnus Carlsen decides to retreat the knight to f3. MVL responds with h6, similar to Magnus Carlsen's h3 MVL. This prevents a potential bg5 from Magnus Carlsen, which could pin the nf6, and also creates an escape square for the king after castling. In 8 move, Magnus Carlsen develops the light-squared bishop to c4, a strong attacking square pointing towards f7. MVL develops the dark-squared bishop to e6, offering to trade the bishop. But Magnus Carlsen refused to take black's bishop, so Magnus retreats the bishop to b3. MVL develops the bishop other to e7, preparing to castle kingside. After that, both player castling in kingside to secure the king. The game continue. Magnus Carlsen centralizes the rook on the e-file, putting pressure on MVL's e5 pawn and potentially supporting a future e-pawn push. MVL centralizes the rook on the semi-open c-file, putting pressure on Magnus Carlsen's c2 pawn and preparing to activate the rook. After that, Magnus Carlsen brings the knight to a strong central outpost on d5, attacking the bishop on e7 and controlling key squares. Therefore, MVL exchanges the bishop for the knight. This removes the strong knight from d5, but also gives Magnus Carlsen a semi-open e-file for the rook. Magnus Carlsen recaptures with the pawn, creating a strong pawn on d5 and opening the e-file for the rook on e1. This pawn also attacks c6. So MVL moves the knight to a5, attacking the bishop on b3 and preparing to relocate it to a more active square or to trade it. Magnus Carlsen saved the bishop a4. Carlsen still need the bishop to maintain pressure on the long diagonal in another occasion. MVL replies by moves the knight to d7, preparing to bring it to a more active square and preparing to push f-pawn. In this position, Magnus Carlsen plays c3, creating an escape square for the bishop on a4 if needed. It also prepares to develop the queen or another piece. MVL continue his plan to advance the f-pawn, challenging Magnus Carlsen's center and aiming for kingside play. This move weakens the kingside slightly, but also opens the f-file for MVL's rook. Magnus Carlsen retreats the bishop to c2, activated again to control over the long diagonal and preparing for kingside attack. Then MVL brings the queen to b6, putting pressure on Magnus Carlsen's b2 pawn to delay white's light square bishop development. Therefore, Magnus Carlsen defends the b2 pawn with the rook. In this position, MVL moves the rook to f7, preparing to double rooks on the f-file and join the kingside attack. Magnus Carlsen responds it by push the a-pawn, creating space on the queenside and potentially preparing to attack MVL's queenside. MVL repositions the queen to c7, maintaining pressure on the c-file, and preparing to support the kingside attack. In this position, Magnus Carlsen played the key move in this game. Magnus Carlsen initiates a kingside pawn storm, aiming to open diagonals for the queen and bishop to attack MVL's king. This is a very aggressive move. Actually, this is a dangerous move for a beginner chess player because it will create weakness on white's kingside. But this is Magnus Carlsen, one of the best ever. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave calculate carefully, and he decides to capture on g4, opening the f-file for his rooks, but also opening the diagonal for Carlsen's bishop. Magnus Carlsen recaptures with the h-pawn. After that, MVL doubles the rooks on the f-file, putting immense pressure on Magnus Carlsen's knight and f2 pawn. This move preparing for a decisive attack. In this position, Magnus Carlsen's knight is attacked. If it move, then black will capture the f2 pawn. Magnus Carlsen has prepared for this move. He decide to not save the knight. So Magnus Carlsen brings the queen to d3, not defending the knight, but threatening checkmate. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave calculate carefully again, and he choose to take the knight. Magnus Carlsen see that this is the time to end the game. So, Magnus Carlsen checks the king with the queen. MVL moves the king to f7, the only square to escaping the check. But after that, Magnus Carlsen delivers another check with the bishop, forcing the king to move. So, MVL tries to move the king to f6, the only safe square. But once again Magnus Carlsen moves the bishop to h5, threatening to checkmate black's king. After this move, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave resign. There is no way to prevent checkmate.